Let us offer our consecration to the Lord. Lord, we offer you this day as we begin our first normal work day in the first week of Lent. Let us really not hold firm to our discipline as a resolution, but let us hold firm to it as an avenue to grow closer to you and grow closer to the mission you have for us. And we ask this through Christ our Lord. Well, today is, of course, Monday of the first week of Lent. It is February 27th and the second last, or as I like to say, penultimate day of February. So here it's an interesting day and all of that. And as you know, I really like to use the first reading of the 2 weekday readings. I mean, I can always go through the gospel, but we always, there was a lot that's spoken of the gospel. And what I want to do is I always like to bring up the first reading because there's just so much in the first reading. And keep in mind, to many who may not be aware of this, in the prior to the Vatican II Council, the Old Testament readings and what was known as the epistles were in Latin. So a lot of people, unless they had the English translation, didn't hear them. And if they didn't read the Bible, then they didn't know them. And so that's important. Now, a lot of people, of course, read the Bible, and a lot of people did have the English translations, but that was different then. And now we do have the English translation of our readings, but it's always good, since we hear them every 3 years, it's always good to go back and really take a time, which I always do in this program, to kind of look what it actually says. Now, our reading this week will come from the book of Leviticus, which is the fourth book of the Bible, and Leviticus is basically a book of rules. Very well known. Some of these rules are, if we lived by those rules today, we would put everyone in front of a firing squad. That's the way it goes. No, it wouldn't be a firing squad. That wouldn't make any sense. In front of a everyone would be stoned to death. I mean, some of the rules that are there that everyone would be stoned to death. And they were very strict rules for the time because you have this very strong community that Moses is speaking on behalf of the Lord to draw closer, and there were things that could not be allowed, there were things that could never be allowed, and there were things that just could not be allowed at that time. And what's happening is they are being taught, the Israeli community are being taught how to live as this people of God that the Lord chose to speak to the whole world throughout time. And one of the interesting things, and this is so true always, that when we think of the Lord speaking to us, He's speaking to us in our time just as he spoke to the Israelis back then, to the Hebrews. But what he was saying to them, we can look back and see from a whole different perspective, which they didn't have that luxury to see too much. They couldn't see into the future. They couldn't see what the fruit of their obedience would do, and even their disobedience. They couldn't see any of that. They could only see that the Lord was forming them to teach them. And so this is one of the things that we understand, that the Lord is similarly teaching us by our actions, but we can also go back to the scriptures and see how he taught others. And we can see some of those rules that do not apply anymore. We may talk about those. And we see some of those rules that do apply, which are those rules written in stone. What's written in stone? The Ten Commandments. The only thing the Lord ever wrote, and these aren't my words, these are Dennis Prager's words. I've been reading and continue reading his Rational Bible series on Deuteronomy. I've gone gone through Genesis, I've gone through Exodus, and now he's in Deuteronomy. I wish he would do Leviticus, but he hasn't done Leviticus yet. And so anyway, Deuteronomy. And he brings out that the only thing the Lord actually wrote that we have, there is one other exception, and I'll explain that in a second. The only thing the Lord ever wrote that we have is the Ten Commandments. What's the exception? When Jesus is writing in the sand as they are condemning the woman caught in adultery, and he's writing in the sand, we have no idea what he wrote. But the one thing that we have that God himself wrote and wrote in stone is the Ten Commandments. So we know those are rules we are called to follow. Now, if we go further into this reading, one of the things that we can see is that the Lord speaks to Moses, and he tells them these words: "Be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy." Well, if you've ever read an instruction book and you ever find, I've had this happen before, and you've ever had problems trying to understand what the instruction are saying, the rule is to go back and read every word in the sentence and figure out, is there a word there that you don't understand? And once you find that word, you find out what that word means in that instruction. For example, when I was first understanding how computers works in software, this was back, working with the software, one of the terms was used was field, which of course is that space that you fill in when you're doing, well, I didn't know what field meant. I mean, I know what field meant, but I didn't know what it meant in this case. And I had to look it up and say, oh, it's that little space that you write things into. That's a field. Oh, now it makes sense. Well, we're going to talk about that on the other side of the break, what it is I'm referring to exactly. You're listening to St. Anthony Overnight from St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts. We'll be right back. Have you told anyone else about St. Anthony Overnight from St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts, here on WEZE in the early morning and through CatholicAudiomedia.com?
You realize we are a different Catholic program because we are not speaking just to Catholics.
We speak to ex-Catholics, atheists, evangelicals, and people from all different religious and non-religious backgrounds.
We do this from a Catholic perspective.
So you're not going to hear what you hear on other programs because we have a different mission serving Jesus Christ.
Tell your friends what we do here is different, and it is so that we all may experience Jesus, who sets us all free. And don't forget our own website, CatholicAudiomedia.com. That's CatholicAudiomedia.com, where you can check out our website and you can listen to our program. You can tell other people about it. You can share the program. You can also donate to the program and everything else. And hey, would you do me a favor? Would you consider making a donation to the Boston Catholic Appeal and tell them that you are making the donation in the name of either St. Anthony Parish, which is the sponsor of this program, or the program itself, which is St. Anthony Overnight from St. Anthony in Allston, Massachusetts. I'll let them know. Say you were listening to the radio program and Father Carr said, could you make a donation in the name of the program? Let them know that you listen and that you appreciate what we do here. You can find them at bostoncatholicappeal.org, or you can also find them through our website, which is CatholicAudiomedia.com. If you do that, that would really help the program. So anyway, we're talking about Leviticus. Now, one of the things is I was talking about finding to what does this word mean? Well, the word that I'm looking at that we see today is through Moses, God is ordering the people to be holy, for I, the Lord, am holy. So the obvious question is, well, what does that mean? And I guess the best way we can put that, looking it up in various sources, is to be set apart, to be sacred. And you know what it actually means to? Is to live in a way that other people do not. Live by a different set of rules, live by a different set of ideas, which we call wisdom. And so when we follow the wisdom of God, now what is one of the greatest signs of the wisdom of God? The Ten Commandments. So now obviously you might turn around and say the Ten Commandments. Well, anyone can follow the Ten Commandments, and generally that's true. Even going to church on Sunday, there are places where atheists go to church on Sunday. That's absolutely true. So even doing that, but it's recognizing what the 10 Commandments say and choosing to live them in a way that say what they really mean. For example, we all know the commandment says do not murder, and say, well, Father, I have really no intention of murdering anybody today. Well, that's true. Are you going to bully anyone? Are you going to trash somebody? Are you going to use words that detract, or are you going to continue to doing that to allow other people? See, as a person who seeks to be holy, you cannot do that. And so when you do that, we call that a sin. And if you happen to be a young person right now and you're going to a school and they're bullying people, or they're bullying someone for whatever reason, it doesn't make any difference, and you're a part of that, then that's a sin. And that's really against, Jesus said, that's against the commandment of, murdering, because you are literally destroying that person from the inside. So, yeah, the commandments are written in stone, but we are called from the Jews and our present way of life to live a different way of life. Jesus even talked about it. He says, if you're living like everyone else does, well, that doesn't mean anything. We're called to live in a way that our life is set apart. That's what holy means. It means to be set apart in a special way, in a very elevated way, in a very consecrated way. And that's who you are. So remember that and take that into consideration. In the meantime, we will be back tomorrow at the same time. You can also hear us at CatholicAudiomedia.com and your favorite podcast platform, and let other people out there know that, and we will be back tomorrow. I want to call your attention to Catholic TV, which offers great faith-filled, family-friendly programming 24 hours a day. You can find your cable channel at www.getcatholictv.com, and you can watch online on the free apps or check out the YouTube channel. Daily Mass, Rosaries, the Divine Mercy Chaplet, and the Our Lady of Perpetual Help Novena are all available online and on demand. Check out CatholicTV.com. If you would like to support our program, please consider a donation to St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts. There are several ways to consider this. One is to purchase any of our merchandise, which you can find at the shopping tab at CatholicAudiomedia.com. That's CatholicAudiomedia.com. There are coffee mugs there. There's also my latest book, Encounter Christ in Your Humanity, all of which you can find at the shopping tab at CatholicAudiomedia.com. You can also donate to the show directly through either the Donate tab, also at CatholicAudiomedia.com, or by sending a donation through the U.S. Postal Service with your questions and comments at 43 Holton Street, Allston, Massachusetts, 02134. That's St. Anthony Parish, 43 Holton Street, Allston, Massachusetts, 02134. Finally, the best way you can support our parish is to attend Mass on Sundays at 10 o'clock and be a part of our parish. We thank you for any support you would like to give to St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts, the sponsoring parish for this media outreach to Catholics and other Christians in the WROL, WEZE, and podcast listening audience. In Cristo vivimos.